So after 3 months using the Lomi 3, the most significant change that we've noticed versus old Lomis is definitely Hi, I'm Ketty from Tilted Map. This channel is all about sustainable travel and also sustainable living, including topics like composting, even if you live in an apartment, which is what we're going to be talking about today with this unboxing of the Lomi 3. I've also been blogging about those topics for many, many years, so go ahead and check out tiltedmap.com for more. I have a whole detailed review of the original Lomi on there as well that has a lot of information that's still really relevant, even for the 3rd generation of the Lomi. Let's open this up. This just came in the mail today. This is the Lomi 3, which is the 3rd Lomi that we've had. We had the Lomi 1 and we did a really big blog post review and then also updated that with a comparison with the Lomi 2 and what had changed between the first 2 models. This is the Lomi 3 and I'm excited to see what is different here. The first thing that I noticed unboxing this is there's actually no tape on the box. It has these little hinges to close it, but they've gotten rid of, it looks like, all of the plastic tape, which is cool. Here's the guide, bit of information. Just like the Lomi 2, I remember, no plastic packaging, it's all cardboard packaging, so that's fantastic. And then, these are the Lomi filters. This is the activated carbon that you put in the filter to make it not smell. And, whew, here we go. Okay, so, put that down there. This is wrapped in a compostable plastic bag, which means it's bioplastic. It's not made out of petroleum, it's made out of plants. But the really interesting thing about this is the first 2 Lomis said on this bag, put this in your Lomi and run a cycle with it. The Lomi 3, they actually don't recommend that you use it with bioplastic. It is lighter. They actually made it about 20% lighter. This weighs 16 pounds and the shape is totally different. That's the first thing I notice is it's definitely going to take up less space on your countertop than the Lomi 1 or 2. They also made the window a lot bigger on top, which is kind of cool. It also has fewer buttons here because they got rid of the Lomi approved mode because you can't put bioplastics in it anymore. It now only has the express mode, the grow mode, and it has a cleaning mode that's supposed to take an hour and a half so that instead of taking it out and putting it in your dishwasher, you can just run a cleaning cycle to clean the bucket here. And then this is just the Wi-Fi indicator since it connects to Wi-Fi and you can use that to schedule a cycle. How do we open it? Ooh, okay. That's totally different. The Lomi 2 had that like twist off handle with a plastic lid. This is actually a glass lid, this window, and then it hinges. You just push this button and it pops up. The bucket is different. This is the bucket that you fill. It's still the same size as before. It still holds 3 liters. Looking inside of it, you can definitely tell that the way that the gear is built is totally different. We are testing this Lomi 3 already, even though we only used the Lomi 2 for about 4 months. Our Lomi 1 has gone strong for a really long time, and then it was really disappointing to see the Lomi 2 break down after just a few months of use. We contacted Lomi, we asked what we could do. They said there was no way to fix it and we should take it to an appliance recycling facility. And that's also a cool thing about the Lomi 3 is that they say that this one now has replacement parts. And that's probably one of the most significant sustainability improvements with the Lomi 3 is that you can actually replace some of the parts. So if that happens again, you actually would have a chance of being able to fix it, which I'm really glad to see. So that's about it. The main differences again between the Lomi 3 and the Lomi 2 are that they made the Lomi 3 a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. It's about 4 pounds lighter than the Lomi 2, which I can actually really notice the difference when I pick it up, even though normally it just stays in one spot on my counter, so it's not like I'm moving it around all the time. They also made it quieter. The Lomi 3 is supposed to be about 45 decibels, which is supposed to be comparable to the noise that a refrigerator makes, whereas the Lomi 2 was about 60 decibels. It wasn't loud by any means, but we did tend to run it at night because if we were home working during the day, you definitely hear it. So I'm excited to see how that compares and how much quieter it actually is than the Lomi 2. And then yeah, the lid and this whole design and the bigger window and the fact that this is glass, I don't know what change that's going to have on actually using it, but it's definitely a different design and that is easier to use than the twist off lid that they had on the Lomi 2 and the Lomi 1. There's also only one place to put the charcoal filter and it's back here. Not a big difference in how you're going to use it or anything like that, but the Lomi 1 and 2 had 2 places for filters and this one only has 1. The first time it was very difficult to open this door. Okay, let's go set it up. Okay. All right, let's get our Lomi 3 set up in our kitchen here. This is our dearly departed Lomi 2. We can't compare the actual noise, but you can at least see the size and see them next to each other. The Lomi 3 is the exact same height, or maybe even like a couple of millimeters shorter. I also can't show you our Lomi 1 because it's currently in Italy with my in-laws, but I'll see if we can get you a clip of that. Hey, we're in Italy now visiting my husband's family, and this is where our Lomi 1 lives now with his aunt and uncle. They have this big beautiful garden. They garden a lot and they compost a lot, but they can't really compost during the winter because the scraps would just freeze, they wouldn't decompose. So in the winter they use the Lomi, and then they save up the Lomi dirt and spread it in their garden or mix it with their other dirt and compost in the spring. So it's cool to see that this is the one that we used for a couple of years, and now they've had it for a year and it's still going strong. Also, if you want to see a different part of Italy with us, check out the video that we're going to link below. That's about the e-bike trips that we host in Italy. First thing that they say to do in the instructions to set it up is put in the charcoal filter. So, okay. When you first order your Lomi, it comes with one package of charcoal filters, unless you order the subscription version, which costs $120 a year right now. And it sends you a new set of the charcoal filter material every 3 months. So that's another significant difference between the Lomi 2 and the Lomi 3 is the Lomi 3 costs $649. So it's definitely a little bit more expensive than the 2. Let's refill this with our Lomi filters inside of our Lomi filter box. And I'm pouring the whole package in because that's what it says to do in the instructions. You're supposed to replace these every 3 months or every 45 cycles. Something new is it now has an indicator light that tells you when you've run 45 cycles. But I've always found that you can tell when it starts to smell, and that's when I replace the filters. Okay, I'm moving these around. There's actually so much in the bag that it was almost too many, and you have to really like level them out so that the lid on this cartridge will close. I'm ready to go. Pushing it back in. There we go. So now we're going to plug it in and connect it to Wi-Fi here so that it's all set up with the app. You're supposed to do that before the first time you run it. The app lets you keep track of how many cycles you've run and what your carbon emission savings is versus throwing that amount of food scraps in the garbage, which is really cool. And it also gives you points for every cycle you run and for a few other things. So those points actually do have a value, but it's not very much value. It's right now like 100 points for $1 that you can use to buy more filters and stuff like that. But mostly the app is useful because you can start and stop the Lomi remotely with your phone, and you can schedule when you want it to start, like if you want it to start after you go to sleep or something like that and you don't want to forget to run it. Let's get the app set up. So we're going to open the Lomi app. Lo Miracolo, that's a pun in Italian. That's what my husband named our Lomi 2. It means the miracle. Okay, we go to add a Lomi. Lomi 3, I understand and have read the policy. Connect your Lomi. It says if the Wi-Fi light is not blinking, then hold the Wi-Fi button for 5 seconds to turn on Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi light is blinking, so that seems to be working. And then I'm just gonna say connect Lomi. It found it. And it says Lomi available network. You're connected to Lomi, step 2 of 3. When the Lomi light stays on, your Lomi is ready. Now the Wi-Fi light is not flashing anymore, so it says it's ready. Continue. You've already invited Lomi home for dinner. Now it's time to give it a name. Instead of calling it Wise Olive, we are going to call it Lo Mistero, the mystery in Italian. Registered. You have successfully registered your Lomi. And you can also start the Lomi just by pushing the button. You don't have to use the app to start it. That's definitely how I do it most of the time, is I just use the good old-fashioned button on the machine. But it is cool that you can schedule a cycle with the app. And then you want it to be registered before you use it for the first time because it's for the warranty. It does come with a 1-year warranty, even if you don't do the subscription. If you do the subscription, then it's going to be extended for as long as you remain subscribed. Let's start our first cycle with the Lomi 3 and see how it goes. This is a few days worth of food scraps. We have this in a compostable bioplastic bag because that's what we used to do with our Lomi 1 and our Lomi 2 in order to store things in a Tupperware container in the fridge and not have to wash it every time because it didn't get dirty because it was in that nice little bioplastic bag. But now that Lomi says not to put bioplastics in the Lomi 3. I'm not gonna break the rules, so I'm gonna pour the scraps out of the bag and just put them straight in. Another thing that I wanna clarify, the carbon emissions that you save with Lomi, it's actually not carbon emissions, it's climate impact, because when we talk about food waste going into landfills, the issue is a different greenhouse gas. That is what's produced when you have food scraps that are in a landfill without any oxygen, because the landfill is like sealed, it's an anaerobic environment. When food scraps decompose without oxygen, they create a lot of methane, which is a different greenhouse gas. It's even more powerful than carbon dioxide, and it's something we want to avoid. So that's the main environmental and climate benefit to composting anyway. And it shows you that also in the app, which is kind of cool. It shows you how much CO2 equivalent. That E is really important because that's the equivalent in CO2, because that's just how we measure climate impact in climate studies. And the actual amount that you save is about 0.32 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions per cycle. About 1/3 of a kilogram of CO2, about 3/4 of a pound that you're saving with every cycle. Another thing to know is there is a fill line inside of the bucket, which is a couple inches down beneath the top of the bucket. So you're not actually supposed to fill it all the way up. That is definitely a rule that we broke all the time in both of our first two Lomis. We would fill it all the way to the top and we never had a problem, or at least we never had a problem with the Lomi 1, which is still going strong after 3 years. You can see in here that we have pretty much the right amount. It might be a tiny bit overfilled. If you move stuff around, I think it would be down to the line. Another interesting thing is that we always use the bioplastic compostable bag method with our own Tupperware that we've had forever as an alternative to what Lomi wants you to do, which is to buy another Lomi bucket that fits in the machine and that has a lid, and that way you can run a cycle and you use your extra bucket to collect the scraps. We keep them in the fridge so that they don't smell, but that's another $100 that you have to pay, which I would rather not have to invest in. So let's start this cycle and see how it goes. So you select your cycle here by actually pushing on the icon. This is grow mode, which is the really long one that takes up to 20 hours, and that's what you want to do if you're really planning to use this in your garden. We sprinkle the Lomi dirt in our lawn and that's fine, but we're not using it for a specific gardening purpose, so we just do the Eco Express mode, and then you just push the center button and it starts. And if you realize you forgot to put something in, you can also push the button and it'll stop and you can open it back up and restart it again. Another common question is how much energy does the Lomi use, which is actually not very much. It uses between 0.6 and 1 kilowatt hour of power per cycle. That's 0.6 for the Eco Express mode and a whole kilowatt hour for the grow mode, which takes a lot longer. And that's less than an average dishwasher cycle. So it's not a huge amount of electricity, that's for sure. But that is one factor that you definitely want to consider if you're thinking about whether or not a Lomi is a good choice for you and whether it would actually have an environmental net benefit. Because no matter what kind of electricity you have, you're reducing the amount of food that you're sending to a landfill, which is, again, the main environmental benefit of a Lomi. But if you don't have a use for the Lomi dirt and you don't even have a place to scatter it, like you don't have a backyard, and that means you would be basically taking your Lomi dirt and putting it in the garbage bin to go to the landfill, and you also don't have renewable energy source for your electricity, then it's probably not going to be all that much of a benefit to get a Lomi. If you do have renewable energy, which we do, and if you don't know how, you can probably switch to renewable energy. It's possible in almost every state in the US at least. You just have to Google your state and how to switch to renewable energy. There are lots of different programs. A lot of times it costs the same as whatever electricity source you have right now. So definitely look into that. That's a huge environmental benefit that you should definitely pair with getting a Lomi. And then if you have a place to use your dirt in nature, whether it's mixing it with soil, which you have to mix it 10 parts soil, 1 part Lomi dirt, or just spreading it on your lawn plain. If you have a use for your Lomi dirt and you have a renewable source of electricity, then I would say it's definitely a good choice. Let's restart the cycle and see how it looks. So now it's been 3 months since we've been using the Lomi 3. The app says that we've run it 46 times, which is about every other day, and it's been working great for us so far. The most significant difference is definitely the fact that it is meaningfully quieter than the Lomi 2. At the beginning of this video, when we were unboxing the Lomi 3 and I was talking about whether or not you should consider upgrading if you have a Lomi 1 or a Lomi 2 to the new Lomi 3, and I said probably not. I definitely still agree that for most people, you don't need to upgrade if you have a Lomi that's currently working. The only exception is if you live in a small space and the noise actually bothers you and impacts your life, then upgrading to the Lomi 3 could certainly be worth it because it is just so much quieter. To give you an idea, we used to only run our Lomi at night in the kitchen, and we would close the kitchen door so that we couldn't really hear it in our bedroom. Now we literally run it while we are in the kitchen cooking, and we don't even notice whether it's on. There are times when I have not known while I was in the kitchen, and then I ask my husband and he says, oh yeah, the Lomi is actually running right now. So that's a huge difference between the Lomi 2 and the Lomi 3 as far as noise level, for sure. Another big difference, of course, is that with the Lomi 3, they say not to run it with bioplastics, and we have mostly been sticking to that rule, but it is definitely a bit disappointing. However, from what Lomi has told us, I don't think that the Lomi 2 was actually more capable of handling bioplastics than the Lomi 3. It's just that they stopped recommending including bioplastics in your Lomi cycles, and they removed the Lomi approved option, and that's because they said that people were getting too confused. They were putting probably too many bioplastics in their cycles because there was a limit of about 10% of each cycle that was supposed to be bioplastics, and I imagine that people were just putting in too much, and a lot of people were probably ending up with broken Lomis because of that, and so they stopped recommending it and they took away the Lomi cycle because it was also confusing which kind of cycle you had to run if you wanted to use the Lomi dirt in your garden versus if you didn't. So for example, this bag is a few weeks worth of Lomi dirt, and this is something that we are actually going to go out and spread in our backyard. And with this, you don't want to have included bioplastics in the cycles that you've run if you want to spread it in your yard like we're going to do with this. However, since we are curious about how the Lomi 3 is going to handle some bioplastics, we do have this old phone case of mine, which is made by Pela, which is a brand that's actually owned by Lomi, and it's made out of bioplastics made with flax. So instead of petroleum, it's plastic made out of plants. And this was designed to go in the original Lomis and be compostable. And since this one is falling apart anyway, as you can see, stay till the end of this video because we're going to run a cycle with this in it and we're going to see how well it breaks down. Finally, the other thing that I really do love about this redesign is that the Lomi 3 is designed with the intent for it to be repairable. Lomi has told us that the modular motor, the lid, and the fan are all going to be replaceable. And that's fantastic news from a sustainability point of view, to be able to reduce the amount of new stuff that you have to buy when something breaks, because eventually something's bound to break. And they're also working on offering a refurbishing program so that you'll be able to actually buy a used Lomi that someone has sent back and that Lomi has refurbished with brand new parts. So those are the main changes, and I do think that the Lomi 3 is the best Lomi yet after personally having owned and used all three of them. Whether it's going to actually be worth an upgrade if you have an old Lomi is entirely going to be up to you. And I'm curious what you think, so let us know in the comments whether you're planning to upgrade, whether you have a Lomi that you're keeping, what your experience has been with Lomis. If you have any questions, let us know and we'll get back to you in the comments for sure. And if you found this video useful, please do us a favor and subscribe to Tilted Map for more videos about realistic sustainability and sustainable travel. We're a very small channel, we're new on YouTube, and we're trying to build a community here of people who really care about sustainability and about making it accessible and realistic and understandable. Please subscribe, keep in touch for more. We'd love to have you join this community. Let us know what you think of the video in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Okay, come here, let's try composting this old phone case of mine. I'm gonna take my microphone off of it. Clip that here. I had this Pela case for about 3 years before it started falling apart. Now, before I put it in the Lomi, I'm gonna cut it up, or maybe just rip it up. Open the Lomi, slice it up into smaller pieces, which is what they always used to recommend for bioplastics with the Lomi 1 and 2 that you were actually supposed to use with bioplastics. So I'm just gonna follow the same rules and we'll see what happens. There we go. This, by the way, is my new Pela case. Like I said, the other one lasted 3 years. This whole thing is also home compostable. We'll see whether it's gonna work or not in the Lomi, but including this back screen that looks like plastic. It is plastic, but it's bioplastic. So made out of plants instead of petroleum. Pretty cool. Let's check back in a few hours and see what this looks like. Work your magic. Okay, let's see how it did with composting the Pela case, the foam case. Here, let me take it out so you can see better. This is the bucket. It looks, here's a piece of the case, but it really broke down a lot. It looks like it did a pretty good job, actually. There are definitely some pieces, so it's broken down into small pieces of flax-based bioplastic. It did a pretty good job. So if you want to check out the Pela cases, I have a link below in the description. They have tons and tons of cool designs, and they actually do break down in compost. Hope that helps.